here. We got a bunch of new things we're adding to the site, so there's going to be a couple of glitches. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up, and we're going to do our best to fix them right away. But as we try to improve things, and as we try to improve them with SaberSim, as you guys know, there sometimes can be a little bit of a waiting time on some of the things. It just takes a little back and forth. We can break things and then fix them. But we want to have everything covered for NFL. Got a bunch of new things to cover. So we'll get into all that as it starts working. Today, I'm just going to go through and do a regular, game by game rundown of what we think of this slate. Kind of frustrated. I kind of wanted all the games on the slate. You got a bunch of games at 6 some odd Eastern time, and we won't have those on the main slate. But we still have a monster slate to go through. For those of you playing in it, for the $1 million, I wish you the best of luck. If it's not me or Sheets or Rody, actually, even including those guys, we hope that it's a true DFS member who can take them that 2,500 and win that $1 million. I know I'll have one in there. I'm sure Sheets will, probably Rody. And good luck to you guys. I hope you guys all do really well today in that one especially. So, all right, let's go through game by game here. I would like to be using the SaberSim stuff. We're having a little bit of issues with the link up between SaberSim and True DFS right now. It should be fixed shortly. But as of right now, at first when you look at the slate and you say there's 12K for Garrett Cole, okay? Do we want to do that? And, look, he put up 24 in this exact matchup the other day. Gave up a couple of home runs, which is basically the reason why. We know the ceiling is there. We know that there's some feeling of a little bit of safety. I hesitate to say that a little bit because we've seen Cole in matchups that are really good get hit around a little bit. But it is really hard to find pitchers that you're comfortable with on this slate. So Garrett Cole is going to be high on my list, but at the same time, a lot of the lineups, a lot of the bats that I want are really expensive, and it's going to be tricky to get to them. So there are plenty of ways around it. There's going to be some cheap bats you can mix in as well. But if you want the stacks, you really want the Atlantas, the Cubs, to some extent, some of the actually everybody's got some expensive bats in there. So we'll have to try and find a way to get around it. I think the Yankees are I don't like playing the Yankees stacks in general these days. It's better since the young guys came up, and you can see look the run scoring totals are just really don't leave you anything to be excited about. What's it been since the 24th that they've scored more than 6 runs in the game? And not that 6 is bad, but I don't want a 5-man stack that on a full slate or a fairly full slate. I do think that Judge, I do think you can do it, and I just probably won't end up with the full Yankee stack myself. But I do think Judge, you could play Judge and Stanton or Judge and Torres with a couple of the young guys or one of the young guys as a secondary stack. That's sort of how I have this rated. I do like, I think Judge, Dominguez, probably Glaber would be my 3 favorites. And then if you wanted to stretch it out, it's pretty easy because you have the cheap option. So it does allow you to play Cole and you can get a 5-man stack. It's just a matter of whether you want to do that with a Yankee team that really left a lot to be desired, to say the least, for most of the season and especially lately. So I am probably not going to be on the full stack side, but I do like them as a mini stack with the guys I mentioned. And I think there's other ways you can go about it as well. You're going to have a cheap catching option probably for the Yankees in Austin Wells. You have Everson Pereira if he moves anywhere in the order because he's batting 8th, projected 8th right now. And obviously the Dominguez, who we have projected 3rd, is going to be a strong play whether you're playing Yankees or not. So I do have Dominguez as one of the better values on the slate, regardless of whether you're playing the Yankees. But certainly one of the stacks we want to consider. There's not a lot of obvious spots. There's a bunch of spots that I think are decent for hitting, but not necessarily the most obvious. Here's an interesting one. The Mets and Nationals. This is another one where I feel similarly to the Mets that I do about the Yankees. And part of it is just that Corbin, well, he hasn't been, it's not like he's been great or anything this year, but he's been much better. He hasn't had those huge blow-up games nearly as often. He did get hit around quite a bit in the last one. And it's just a matter of, do we want to play a Mets team that also has left a little bit to be desired for the most part, but we have seen some outbursts from them here and there. Pete Alonso, either way, is an awesome one-off play. Not only is he, great against lefties, and you have Corbin is exactly the type of pitcher he crushes. He actually has directly crushed Corbin, and I think he's had 34 bats with 5 home runs, and he's hitting 320, 330 off of them, something like that. I am totally good with getting to some Mets. I don't think they're my priority stack. For what it's worth, it's 93 degrees in Washington, a big stadium upgrade for the Mets. little bit of wind blowing in 5 miles an hour from left center field. I have no issue with the Mets stack here. They didn't quite make my priority list, but they are on the second tier along with the Yankees, a little bit ahead of the Yankees. And the bats you're looking at there would be Alonso, would be Jeff McNeil. I'm sorry, would be McNeil and Stacks. The Alonso and Lindor would be the two you want to get to the most. I do like Alvarez also as a catching option at 3,500. And then you get the cheap bats like Vientos, Arias, and Mauricio if you wanted to round out a full stack. I have no issue with it. Second tier stack for me, but still, I definitely think a very viable one. I'm not getting to either of the pitchers. Quintana, as much as he's been very good in real life, we just aren't getting the fantasy production we want necessarily. But if you told me right now he can get 20, I think I'd probably take that with the way this slate is stacking up and the fact that they raised the pitchers' prices again. So I don't have an issue with Quintana, but I personally think there's probably better ways to go looking for upside on a slate like this. And again, just pretty good hitting weather in Washington. And Washington's pesky against lefties. They hit lefties better than they do righties, and they don't strike out a lot. So something to keep in mind if you do want to load up any Quintana. All right, let's move on to the Braves in St. Louis. So the Braves, same story as always, right, guys? You guys know exactly what I'm going to say every time the Braves are playing against any pitcher who is average or even a little better than average to below average. Mikolas has certainly not been the pitcher that we've seen in the past this season. The one thing that I hate about stacking against him is he still doesn't have the walk rate that we do with some other guys in the slate, although it's been up this year. And you can see he's struggled in some outings recently. He's given up some bombs. He's around the plate, and he's not going to strike a lot of people out. So it sort of adds to Atlanta's upside. But he's as bad as he's been. I don't know. It feels like Atlanta with the highest run total on the slate. I am gonna have some Atlanta stacks. Don't get me wrong, and they are a priority for me because it's Atlanta at home in great hitting weather, 85 degrees, 50% humidity. But I'm probably going to be less on Atlanta than I am the teams in the next game that I'm going to talk about because they are tough to get in. You do have Rosario down at 4K now, RC at 4,100, Harris at 45. Those will probably be the cheapest bats in Atlanta's lineup. And just another thing to mention about Atlanta, one thing you're going to have to look out for going forward is, they got out of the big series with the Dodgers where they were really going to play their best and put their best foot forward because it's the Dodgers. They're the two best teams in baseball. And they won 3 out of 4. Congratulations to them. They played really well. But I think that as far as stacks go today, I do have Atlanta as a team I'd like to get in. It's just really hard to do at these prices. Well, when you've got Albies at 6K, Acuna at 6,800, Olsen at 6,400, Riley at 58. You're going to have to pick and choose. You're probably going to have to play some of the bottom of the order if you want to play them, even if you use cheap pitchers. So I'm on board with Atlanta, but I prefer them more as a secondary stack, even though they're a priority list for me. But I can't quite find a way to fit the 5 I want in. So probably going to end up being a little bit more 3-man's Atlanta for me. And my favorite 3 of that would be Acuna, Olsen. No shockers here. Acuna, Olsen, Riley, then Ozuna, then Albies. Just pricing and everything considered. Probably going to have to get some Rosario and Arcia though in there just if you want to make the full stacks work because they are cheaper. No interest in Soroka coming off of the DL. The guy's really talented. It wouldn't surprise me if he pitched well, but you can see he hasn't pitched in a couple weeks now. And I just don't really know what they're not really gonna overuse him, I don't think, here unless he's completely rolling. I just personally am probably not going to end up on the Soroka thing, although I'm not going to fault anyone for doing it because we don't have a lot of, we must play this guy type of pitching options today. I said the next game was the one I was going to get into that I like the hitting. This is not the game. It's actually the Cubs and Giants. And I'll get into that in a minute. But we'll talk about Chicago and KC, which is weird because, so it's 91 degrees with 13 miles an hour wind blowing out to right center, which makes both of these stacks against 2 pitchers who we've seen have an extremely wide range of outcomes. They are definitely both high on my list today of guys I would like to use, guys I would like to think about using and guys I would like to stack against. So I have both of this whole game as stackable. It doesn't feel fun with the White Sox, doesn't feel fun with the Royals, but I do think both of these teams are in really, really good spots today. And just with the hitting weather and 2 volatile pitchers, I also think both pitchers are in play because we don't have enough other guys. So I do have Season Singer as 2 of the guys I'm considering, but no, neither of which show up as a priority for me right now. So going to be kind of interesting to see how that one plays out. Let me just make sure real quick that I've got the right game. Yeah, I do. And yeah, this is one you could definitely go both ways with. Anyway, but I personally am more trying not to get too excited about the pitching there, and I am open to especially KC stacks. We've seen C's when he gets hit, he gets really hit hard. Everybody who knows me, who's been watching us for a long time, that I don't love stacking against bullpen games, and this is going to be a bullpen game for San Francisco in the way they do it, and it does make it tougher. I just can't resist the Cubs when it's 83 degrees with 14-mile-an-hour winds, where it matters more than it does any other stadium, blowing out to left field. At 67% humidity, the over/under in this game is 10.5. I like the over, even with that high total. And the Cubs have been really good against lefties. It might be Ryan Walker to start. You may end up, they do different things with the Giants, so you don't really always know exactly who they're going to pitch. But I am going to be high on the Cubs especially, and the Giants as well. Hendricks is a guy I don't usually like to pick on unless the weather is like this, and it is like this. So I am going to pick on a little bit of Hendricks. A little bit concerned by the fact that he hasn't been giving up a ton of home runs this season. He did have that one game where he gave him 4 home runs against Boston in Chicago when it was similar conditions. I think that this is a good spot to game stack, and I have this as one of my highest priorities on the slate for hitting both the Cubs and Giants. Just remember, with the Giants, always some pinch hit risk. And with the Cubs, they crush lefties. It seems like a really, really good spot for them once they get to Manaea, assuming they do, in fact, pitch Manaea. You never know. They might do something different. But pretty much anybody the Giants bring out of the pen, I'm still going to have some interest in the Cubs here. So I really like this game, even though we do have a somewhat of a bullpen game for the Giants. It's a different type of bullpen game because you have the long relievers. So it's not like you're getting 1 inning out of 9 guys. You're getting 2 and then 4 and whatnot. And I think those relief pitchers they're going to throw 60, 70 pitches anyway. It's good enough for me anyway. I really like the spot in general, so I am going to be high on this game from the hitting perspective. And those of you who see my early builds a little bit later in the premium section are going to see that reflected there. Here's an interesting spot: Houston, Texas. 2 really good offenses, 2 really good pitchers with Eovaldi coming off of the DL. If I wanted to get really super creative on this slate, I don't think I necessarily do. I actually think playing a little bit of the Astros is not a bad idea, but they're just so expensive. If you could tell, if they were $2K cheaper than the Braves, then we could have a real conversation about maybe taking some shots against Eovaldi coming back. But I just think overall this game is probably a cross-off for me. I think I want to go up to Cole or down to some of these other questionable plays. If we get some extra value, maybe I could talk myself into a little bit of Valdez with Cole, but I just don't think we're going to have enough with the stacks that I want to get there today. So just wanted to throw that out there. Guys, while you're in there, please remember to like and subscribe and all that stuff if you haven't already. It allows us to keep doing these videos for free. We are adding a bunch of new stuff to the site, but we want to keep some of these videos free so other people can get a little glimpse of what we do. Also, fire on any questions or thoughts. Say what's up. It's good to see you guys. Really good to be back. Had a nice, I wouldn't say it's a break. It was a lot of personal family stuff that I was dealing with, but it is nice to get back in the swing of things and focus on some DFS. And we've got football on Sunday. Boy, I can hardly wait for that. I've been got really into the U.S. Open, so a lot of different stuff going on in Bobby's world these days. Anyway, Baltimore and LA. I am probably going to be off the hitting in this game, and I have interest in Kremer as a pitcher. I've been a big Kremer believer, and he's starting to pay off for us. But again, the prices are a little bit higher than we'd want to spend, right? Like we don't want to spend $8,600 on him. We'd like to spend $7,600 on him, save that extra $1,000. That would be nice. We just don't have that option, and there aren't a lot of great options today. So Kremer is definitely high on my list. Very, very solid pitcher with and a good bullpen behind him, so no bats for the Angels. If you wanted to talk yourself into a Baltimore stack, I think that's viable, but they didn't even make my list, and there's so many other stacks that did today. Sort of a stadium neutral type of situation, a little bit of a downgrade for them. But the Orioles people probably think the Hitters Park is a little better than it is, but it's certainly better than the Angels Stadium, although it's 72 degrees in LA today. So, better hitting weather than we saw in LA early in the season. and you're going to have a really weak Angels lineup out there. So I think Kremer with maybe the Orioles would be my sum up for this game. Toronto and Oakland, this is where we're at, guys, in 2023. Chris Bassitt near 10K, and I have definite interest. His former team, maybe you hold that against him. He did have one start against them earlier this year. He did not pitch especially well in that start. I do have some concerns always about rostering him near 10K, but you see he's overall been fairly consistent. He does have a massive amount of upside, as we've seen more early in the year when he was putting up a 35 to 37. He had that 42 with the complete gamer in there. There is definitely a ceiling for him against his old Oakland team here. And again, it's in Oakland, so it's a bad hitter's park, 67 degrees, one of the worst hitting conditions on the slate, the lowest run total, I believe, on the slate, second lowest run total behind the Tigers on the slate. So I am totally good with Bassitt. If you could get to him, I would play him over Valdez. I mentioned Valdez and Cole if you wanted to try and double spend that. I think Bassitt would be the one I would actually prefer, and I actually have Bassitt currently as a priority pitcher for me on this slate. I think Toronto is kind of interesting as a low-owned stack. The problem is, again, you're talking about a team they're not crazy expensive. They're not crazy cheap. You can get them in. If you get Ernie Clement and Espinal in the lineup, it makes it really cheap. And it's the A's. And people don't like to stack against the A's in Oakland. They like to stack on them other places when there's full slates. I think this is a good spot to actually stack the Blue Jays. So I do have Toronto as a secondary stack for me, behind Atlanta, the Cubs, and the Giants. But I am completely cool with the idea of playing the Blue Jays and just trying to get that late night hammer, get the big win. Maybe they take you to the top and win you that $1 million. That wouldn't surprise me. Bassitt, I actually think that, and then you play Bassitt with them, hoping he's got the 5-6 run lead and they keep cruising. Obviously a lot easier for pitchers to pitch and for upside, especially for DFS, when you have that little cushion. And hopefully Toronto will give them that cushion if you're going to play that stack tonight. Philadelphia, San Diego. This is an interesting one for me because I think there's an argument for both sides of Philly and San Diego here. The thing that's throwing me a little bit is I just don't feel like there's nothing. They're so expensive, and there's just nothing I can. Am I really going to play these stacks over Atlanta, over the Cubs? I just don't want to. I would rather play Atlanta and the Cubs. These guys are both fine. I think both stacks are viable. No interest in Lorenzen for me, although he's been pretty good. Actually, he's been very good actually overall. And I don't think I can get to Avila with no, ceiling. You look at his innings pitched, he's not, he gets himself into trouble early. So he probably caps out around 80 to 90 unless he's really cruising. We've seen 90 from him against the Dodgers earlier when he was pitching really well. Maybe you keep him on the list. It feels like a guy who you'd rather play at 5,300 and as a dumpster diving than 6,300, which starts to feel like a real pitcher. And I don't think we can quite call Avila that. Although there certainly have been worse plays made than playing Avila at 6,300 on this kind of a slate. Just not all that exciting, this whole slate, pitching-wise. And then we get into Colorado, Arizona, and this may be a mistake, but at first look, and again, I haven't looked at any projections or anything like that yet. I have, however you want to say it, PFAT. I like saying PFAT because I think it sounds funny. I actually have him, the guy who's got a 6.2 ERA and is 1-7. I've got him as a borderline priority here against Colorado. 6,900, again, has an actual ceiling, unlike Avila, who's the guy in the price range who I think you'd consider. And I think, look, it's viable enough against the Rockies. We've seen righties against Rockies on the road has been a good course of action for us this season. And I think that's a reasonable place to stay with it tonight. So I do have PFAT as a guy who at the moment I'm currently planning on playing quite a bit of tonight. So we'll see if it comes back to bite me, but there's not a lot of great options. So that is where I'm at there. I even think on how bad the slate is, I was actually even trying to think, is there any way I can play Kyle Freeland? Because at least I know he's got a leash. The problem is you just look at it, it's so hard for him to get there. He had some good games there earlier in the year. It's just rough for him to get there. And it's Arizona, who I just don't like taking lefties against. I also don't have any interest in the Arizona bats, just because I prefer the other stacks better. But I certainly have no problem if that's the route you want to go and play Arizona bats. So to sum up, I have Cole, Bassitt, PFAT, and Kremer as my favorite pitchers, with Singer, Cease, and Quintana behind them. And then I have the Cubs, Giants, and Braves as my favorite stacks, with the Yankees, Blue Jays, KC, and the Mets behind them, and then potentially Philadelphia, San Diego, although I'm not as excited about that one. But we will be with you live at 6 Eastern. We're going to be having some football stuff for you. We're going to be having we'll do the first look for football. We'll do a position by position when it comes Thursdays. On Fridays, we'll do after the injury reports, we'll do our updates then. And then on Sunday, we'll do live at 11 Eastern, just to remind everybody. It'll be Sheets, Rody, and I. And we're ready to have a big football season, guys. I'm really pumped up about this. Anyway, I appreciate all you True DFS members. If you guys haven't signed up with us yet, please do. There's a lot of cool premium stuff that we have, not to mention just the premium Discord itself going off is just a great place with a lot of good minds, including everybody who works for our site is extremely active, especially Rody and Goldie and myself usually, although I haven't been in there as much lately. But guys, I'm ready to get back after it. Let's have a big day. Any questions that come up, pop them in the premium Discord. Make sure to tag me so that way I can get involved, or tag Rody if you have a Rody question. Obviously, tag whoever it's intended for, Goldie, etc. And let's make some money. I'm ready to get back after it and ready to make a big splash here right before NFL. We'll get all the money won this week so that we don't even have to worry about like losing anything during NFL, and then we just clean up during NFL. I'm looking forward to it. All right, guys, I appreciate you all. Again, thumbs up and like, and good luck to everybody. It's great to be back. Appreciate y'all.